On July 14, 2015, after a 9-year odyssey, New Horizons began its final approach towards Pluto. Already being the fastest probe sent into space, when New Horizons flew by Jupiter in 2007, it used the planet's immense gravity as a slingshot, removing a total of 3 years from its journey. What New Horizons was able to capture of the dwarf planet left scientists in awe and disbelief. What had been believed to be a dead, lifeless world was absolutely anything but. For 10 years prior, this photo was the clearest image of Pluto that we had. The images New Horizons sent back to Earth of Pluto's surface showed vast mountain ranges, some measuring 11,000 feet high, a strong indication of cryovolcanic activity, and that Pluto sometimes even possesses an atmosphere. The two most notable of these apparent volcanoes are known as Picard Mons and Wright Mons, and are both found on Pluto's most southern hemisphere. However, further studies of these depressions have scientists suggesting that they are not two single entities, but instead are a part of a more expansive shifting of ice formations created from eruptions under Pluto's crust. Its surface is much younger than previously thought, consisting mainly of 98% nitrogen ice. Methane and carbon monoxide are also present in Pluto's chemical makeup. Unlike the four gas giants, Pluto is quite similar to Earth in that it's mostly composed of rock and water ice. However, Pluto is 1/3 water, which is 3 times the amount of all of Earth's oceans combined. It most likely contains a rocky core and the possibility of a slushy subsurface ocean. Pluto's iconic heart-shaped region, otherwise known as Sputnik Planitia, is actually a basin rather than a plateau as previous theories held. Scientists were confused at the lack of impact craters and just exactly how it remained so smooth and undisturbed considering the absence of a protective magnetic field. But we know now that this area actually sits 3 kilometers below the rest of its surrounding surface, and is formed by nitrogen ice that melts and refreezes during Pluto's day and night cycles. This causes the winds in Sputnik Planitia to blow in the opposite direction of Pluto's rotation, forever keeping Pluto's heart intact. Sputnik Planitia is essentially a frozen ocean that is being fed and replenished by the glaciers moving in from the mountains and chasms that surround it. It is also an accumulation of all of Pluto's chemical compounds being contained in one area. Since Pluto's atmosphere is extremely weak, it makes sense that retention of nitrogen and methane would occur in lower elevations. 1 year on Pluto lasts 248 Earth years, and for 20 of those years, its elliptical orbit brings it closer to the Sun than Neptune. When this happens, the surface becomes gaseous and starts to rise, forming a thin layer that surrounds it. As Pluto cools, this process begins all over again. Nitrogen and methane fall back to the surface, giving Pluto its brownish-red coating. This process is also known as tholins, a chemical reaction between methane particles and the UV rays from sunlight. A bizarre detail that New Horizons discovered was that Pluto and its largest moon, Charon, both rotate around a fixed point of space called the barycenter. The barycenter is a center of mass in which 2 or more objects orbit around. In this case, that center of mass sits outside of Pluto and is the reason the 2 objects are tidally locked to each other. Pluto and Charon will always show the same face and never deviate. Our moon is also tidally locked to us, hence why we say the dark side of the moon. Now, it gets a bit more interesting. The barycenter I mentioned previously makes Pluto and Charon a binary planet system. Considering Charon is smaller than Pluto, it's still rather large considering, and due to the mass of Charon, Pluto is pulled off of this barycenter. Because of this, the rotation of Pluto will almost certainly be dictated by Charon. Should Charon move further away, Pluto's rotation will slow down. If Charon moved closer, Pluto's rotation would increase. The discovery of Charon came in 1978 when astronomer James Christie was comparing past images of Pluto. He noticed in some earlier photos that Pluto was perfectly circular, but in others it appeared elongated, like a pear. Christie used mathematical calculations to explain this bizarre phenomena, to which his only conclusion pointed to the presence of a possible moon. His theory was confirmed under a month later when new images were compared. Sure enough, there was Charon, exactly where it was calculated to be. This photo is the very photo that led to Mr. Christie's discovery. In the image to the left, you can clearly see a difference in the planet's shape. The image to the right was taken 6 days later, yet Pluto is once again circular. 6 days, 6.4 more like, is the exact length of Pluto's rotation period. The confirmation of Pluto harboring a moon obviously asks the question of how was it formed. The short answer and generally accepted theory is that it came from Pluto itself as a result of a massive collision in the early formation of our solar system. Charon is very small, only having a radius of 606 kilometers. It sits just over 12,000 miles from Pluto. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for, and how it sometimes serves as a protective shield. I explained earlier that while Pluto does have an atmosphere, it is very weak, and without a magnetic field to protect it, solar winds constantly rip away at it, causing that atmosphere to disappear. What happens then is that since Pluto and Charon are so close together, the atmospheric gases leaving Pluto are pulled toward Charon by the moon's gravitation. This produces a temporary ionosphere of sorts. The ionosphere is formed when electromagnetic and particle radiation from the sun and space ionize air molecules. Thus, when Charon moves between Pluto and the sun, it is absorbing ultraviolet rays and preventing them from fully impacting Pluto. Unfortunately, New Horizons was not able to see this in real time. We only know this happens due to the differences in what was observed and then later compared to when Pluto's atmosphere was first detected in 1988, when it passed in front of a star. With that being said, had we been able to witness such a phenomena, Pluto and Charon would appear to be engaging in a literal snowball fight that would be spectacular beyond words. The surface features of Charon opened even further questions about its formation. It is believed that the moon formed warm and held a subsurface ocean in its formative development. Scientists point to the immense ridges and chasms seen on Charon's equatorial plane, most notably Serenity Chasma, a very visible belt-like fracture that provides evidence that as the surface cooled, the freezing of water expanded, causing the surface to literally break apart. Argochasma is another geological feature. Found in the northern part of the moon, it is estimated to be 5.5 miles deep and span 430 miles across. In comparison, that is 5 times the depth and 150 miles longer than the Grand Canyon. Visiting Pluto was an astounding feat in its own right, and for me personally, just the actual reality that NASA was able to navigate a spacecraft to the furthest reaches of space we had ever been is beyond my wildest comprehension. For 9 years, New Horizons floated through space, no system failures, no collisions with asteroids or space debris, and traveled an astounding distance of 3 billion miles away from Earth. That truly is unbelievable. Who knows if NASA will decide to send another probe to revisit these two incredible objects in our lifetime, but at least until then, we have a wealth of images and knowledge to ruminate over and cherish. As of 2022, New Horizons is about 5 billion miles away from Earth, and will continue collecting data on Kuiper Belt objects for at least until 2025. Its most recent focus was the asteroid Arrokoth, which it flew by in 2019 and is still continuing to transmit data back to NASA to study about this object and the overall region in which it exists. But someday, just like the Voyager probes, all communication with these satellites will be lost forever. Who knows, perhaps hundreds, if not thousands of years from now, interstellar space travel won't just be a thing of fiction anymore, and maybe, just maybe, our ancient technology will be seen once again. Thank you for watching.